So let's talk about your mouth. Have you ever really thought about your mouth? Because it's pretty amazing. People have got all these articulators, all these moving parts, that work together to make the huge variety of sounds that we use for language. You use incredible finesse and control to perform the urgent job of transforming your thoughts into words. And today we're going to talk about just what those articulators do. I'm Moti Lieberman and this is the Ling Space.
Welcome to the Ling Space.
There are different ways to count, but at the very least there are over 100 consonant sounds in the world. And depending on your dialect of English, you might have a different number, but for my variety, I've got 24. Linguists have come up with specific symbols for all of them, called the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA, and stuck them together in cool charts, like this. We saw these in episode 12, but let's look into what these cool little symbols mean in more detail. We're going to stick with the consonant chart for today, and come back to the vowel chart in a later episode. The consonant chart may look scary, but there's actually a whole system there. The columns are for place of articulation. These show where in the vocal tract the sound is crafted, like in your throat, at your soft palate, between your teeth, and so on. You can see there's a lot of different places, and that's because even though the inside of your mouth might not be a large area, we've divided it up into tiny little phonetic territories. The rows, on the other hand, tell us about manner of articulation, or the particular way that the air interacts with your mouth bits to make the sound. You can let the air through free and easy, or only angry hissy streams of it, or just stop it completely. The order the IPA chart is written in tells us how to make the sounds too. The further to the left you go, the further forward in the vocal tract the sound is pronounced. For example, up at the top left here we have p, which is a bilabial stop. So it's made with both of your lips, bilabial, and the air doesn't make it out of your vocal tract at all. Your lips just outright plug it up. Just try saying a p without a vowel after it. See? No air. And because your lips are all the way at the end of the vocal tract, the bilabial sounds are found at the left edge of the chart. When you go back from your lips, you find your teeth, and so dental sounds are the next up. Labiodental sounds use both the lips and teeth, so sounds like f and v qualify. On the other hand, interdental sounds like th and the are made by putting your tongue in between your teeth. The nice things about consonants this far forward is that it's really easy to see how you make them. You can see the f or the v in action. If you keep working your way down the vocal tract, you'll hit a few more places of articulation. One pretty useful one you might not know about is the alveolar ridge, that curvy slope right behind your front teeth just at the beginning of the roof of your mouth. You can make all kinds of really common consonants there, like ool or s or n. In fact, more kinds of consonants are made at the alveolar ridge than at any other place. Just about any way you can make a consonant, you can do it at the alveolar ridge. Postalveolar sounds like sh are made just a little back from the alveolar ridge, but not all the way to the hard palate. You want to use all the space after all. So you go and make some sh sounds. The next place on the chart is actually a little bit different. It's actually smuggling a manner of making consonants into the columns meant for place. Retroflex sounds involve curling the tongue up to make the closure against the top of the mouth, so to make sounds like duh or sh or They don't really show up in English, but they're pretty common cross-linguistically. You get them in languages like Tamil, Hausa, and Polish. And we list them here because the folding back still puts the tongue in the same general place as your regular ts and nus. It's just the other side of the tongue. Okay, now we're getting nice and far back in the mouth to sounds that you make with the main body of your tongue. So palatal sounds are made at the hard palate, that solid place at the top of your mouth. We don't have a ton of these in English either, but if you go y, then that's where palatal sounds live. We also have the h sound in German words like ich or mich placed here. What we do have in English though are velar sounds, or sounds that are made against the soft palate, or velum. That's the squishy bit that's right behind the hard palate. Here's where our k's and g's hang out. Also our ngs, which is the sound that you get at the end of words like sing or wrong. It might seem like these are two separate sounds, but if you feel how your mouth moves when you make a word like pang, you'll notice that your tongue never goes anywhere near the alveolar ridge. It's all up at the back, pillowing up against the soft palate. Now our next column is for uvular sounds. They're made against that little dangly punching bag thing at the back of your throat, the uvula. These don't exist in English at all, but we make the French r back there, as well as sounds like q and h, which exist in languages from Aleut to Arabic. Finally, we have sounds that are made even further down, like right in the throat. Some of these, like the pharyngeal and epiglottal sounds, are made by constricting the airflow just above the vocal folds in the larynx. But the farthest back place you can make a consonant is in the larynx itself. These are known as glottal sounds, from the technical term glottis, the space that appears between the vocal folds when they open for air to pass through. We've got a couple of these sounds in English. One is h, which is a glottal fricative, but the other you might not have even noticed as a sound before. It's the sudden stop in the middle of a word like uh-oh, or the sound before n in button. This is called a glottal stop, and even though it's not widespread in English, it's still part of our inventory of sounds. Okay, so those are all the places of articulation. These are the columns in our table, from left to right in the chart and from front to back in our mouths. Now, let's go back and check out what rows we have. They represent the different manners of articulation, or the way that you can cut up the airflow as it passes through your vocal tract. These generally go in the chart from most closed to most open, so from top to bottom. So up top we have plosives, which are also known as stops. Like you'd guess from the name, these are pronounced by stopping the air completely and then letting it go again. Our old friends p, t, and k are here, as well as b, d, and g. And of course, there are other stops too, like the q that we talked about earlier. Whenever you're pushing air from your lungs, and it can't escape from your mouth until you let go, that's a stop. But what if you stop air from getting out of your mouth, but you leave another escape route? Like, say, through your nose. Down one row, we have the nasals, your n's and n's, but also the we saw before. Here, the air only comes out of your nose. There's a complete stop in your mouth, but you lower your soft palate and the air rushes out the only way it can, through your nasal cavity. That's why when you have a cold and your nose is plugged up, your n's sound a lot like does. Duh, n are the same sound if you take your nose away. The next rows are for sounds that are like stops, but just executed really rapidly. Trills involve closing and opening the airflow multiple times quickly in the same place, just drumming one articulator against another. So it's like the alveolar trill that you get in Spanish for r, like in a word like burro or donkey. Or the bilabial trill r, which shows up in the Nias word for jaw, siri. Taps, also known as flaps, are just like a trill, except instead of repeating the movement over and over, you just do it once. The d sound in butter is a flap, for example, as is the middle consonant in the Japanese word for spicy, karai. The next bunch of sounds finally get away from total closure of the mouth, and they're known as fricatives. Fricatives are noisy sounds. The air does come out, unlike with plosives, but it is mostly obstructed still, so it comes out in a pretty hissy kind of way. Now we can get these guys at pretty much every place of articulation. A few nice examples are f and v, which are labiodental fricatives, or s and z, which are alveolar ones. The most free-flowing kind of consonants are known as approximants. For these sounds, air can make it up pretty easily from the lungs and out of the mouth, but it's not quite as smoother-eyed as is with vowels, where the air is super free. Now English has three regular approximants, y, and w. These sounds have very strong acoustic profiles. They're loud and easy to hear. Y and w are almost exactly the same as the vowels in, just said really quickly. Just hold a y and c. Y. But they behave basically like consonants for how languages treat them. You'll note that there are two other rows there as well, for lateral fricatives and approximants. What's that lateral thing about? Well, usually air just flows right out through the middle of our mouths. But that's not the only way for it to go. You can also block up the middle of the mouth, but curl down the sides of your tongue and let the air escape that way. That's why these sounds are known as laterals. They've got side flow. Just feel what you do with your tongue for ul in English, like in lucky. Sides down, right? But if they don't go all the way down, you can get tight fricative style flow around the sides of the tongue, like in the Welsh word for the other, chach. Finally, maybe you've noticed that we've been pairing up sounds together on the chart, like f and v or s and z. That's because there's one other way in which sounds can differ besides place and manner of articulation. Sounds can also be voiced or voiceless depending on whether your vocal folds are vibrating or not while you say them. Now you can see this for yourself. Just put your fingers here on your throat and then say s. Now you might hear a little bit of hissing in your mouth, but that's where it ends, right? Okay, now switch to zzz. Whoa, now your throat is all vibraty too. That's because the zzz sound is voiced and s is voiceless. Now the same is true for th and th. Try it out, I'll wait. As huge as the IPA chart can seem, it really covers only a fraction of the sounds that human language contains. We can add a whole bunch of diacritics, or symbols on or next to the letter, to show exactly how you're pronouncing things. Now, if you're curious about what those look like, we have some information about it back on our website. But you can see just how much we can capture using only these 3 dimensions: where we pronounce things, how much air we let through, and whether we're vibrating while we do it. We only need 3 factors to show you just how amazing your mouth really is. So we've reached the end of the Ling space for this week. If you correctly read the places of my articulators, you learned that the IPA chart is organized by place and manner of articulation. That we divide up the inside of our mouth into tiny little regions from the lips back to the larynx. That we distinguish different consonants based on how much air can escape from the vocal tract and how it gets out. And that we can make even more sounds by vibrating our vocal folds while we talk. The Ling space is produced by me, Moti Lieberman. It's directed by Delélise Prévost, and it's written by both of us. Our production assistant is Georges Coulombe, our music and sound design is by Shane Turner, and our graphics team is Atelier Muse. We're down in the comments below, or you can bring the discussion back over to our website where we'll have some extra material on this topic. Check us out on Tumblr, Twitter, and Facebook, and if you want to keep expanding your own personal Ling space, please subscribe. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Sziasztok!